Hello and welcome to the Irish Aesthete. Today I'm in the library at Tullynally, County Westmeath, with the house's owner, Thomas Pakenham, and we're going to talk a bit about this room and its history and contents.
Thomas, this has always been my favourite room in Tullynally, the library. And the space that we're in, what date is it?
Well, what we're looking at now is really a room completed in about 1820. In other words, 200 years ago. But it had been a library earlier on, and originally that back wall, which is full of volumes right up to the ceiling, was 10 foot nearer, and they ran out of space. You see, they were acquiring books at a regular rate, and they didn't take them to Oxfam in those days, and so the 18th century books were really had filled the room by 1820. So they moved the wall, and if you look at the high up near the ceiling, you'll see 12 black plaster busts.
Yeah.
And they're called, the official name was they were part of a 24 bust set called the 12 Ancients and the 12 Moderns. And we've actually got 6 Ancients and 6 Moderns. And that all suggests that they come from an earlier period, because they actually date from the middle 18th century. So there's a smaller library, and they would then have had 12 what do you call them? They're not panels, are they? What do you call the divisions?
Exactly, divisions is probably the simplest word to
Yes.
use, to divide up the different sections of the collection. But the earliest inventory of the library is 18th century, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, 1780, in the handwriting of the Lord Longford of the period, who was a naval officer, as well as a peer and a country house landowner. But and he's a rather charming man, and he was a great friend of the Edgeworths. In the memoirs of Richard Lovell Edgeworth, completed by his daughter, the famous Maria, in that he is the frontispiece. The engraving of that Lord Longford is in the frontispiece of the second volume. And the link between them is that when he was a young man, Richard Lovell Edgeworth, Father Maria, was mad on field sports, like most country gentlemen, chasing foxes and hares and shooting them. And he met Lord Longford at a great party, which must have probably been in the hall outside the room. And this probably would have been about 1760, 1770. He was very young. And I think it was his Lady Longford said to him, "My dear Richard, let me give you the key to the book room," which would be the library of that day.
Exactly,
let me give you the key. So he describes going into the room, a locked library, and finding absolutely his delight, and never giving up field sports. So it had a great effect on him intellectually.
He gave up field sports in order to devote his time to learning.
And he was a great improver. He was an inventor.
He was.
He invented a telegraph system which was warning the British executive in Dublin when the French were going to land, which of course they did at Killala.
While we're in this room, Thomas, I need you just to tell me a little bit about the gentleman hanging over the chimneypiece.
Well, he was the unfortunate general, Sir Edward Pakenham, known as Ned Pakenham, younger brother of the second Earl, Lord Longford of the period, and he had the misfortune to have one of his brothers-in-law was the great Duke of Wellington. Now, you wouldn't have thought that was much of a misfortune, but it ended badly with him being sent out to New Orleans, where he was mortally wounded in the assault on the city of New Orleans. But earlier he had a good run, and if you look at the picture, you'll see that his chest has a series of medals. I think it's 3 medals and a Peninsular Gold Cross, and they were victories of the Wellington's forces, his brother-in-law's army.
Yes.
And he's holding in his hand a sheaf of papers which says Parliament and it's actually a note of the thanks of Parliament to him and other generals. And he did end up in a barrel of rum, which was perhaps a rather sort of odd way to go. He came back to Westmeath to be buried in the family vault in Killucan, but that was his body. But but his spirit at least moves on. We like to think is here. It's also in St Paul's Cathedral. If you go there, look behind a pillar, you'll find a marble statue of him.
Okay.
So he's actually the only one in the family, really, who ever did anything of.
Well, who had a kind of distinguished public career.
Yes,
really.
yes.
I seem to remember there's a story that he was quite grumpy, and as you say, when he was killed at New Orleans, in order to preserve his body to be brought back, hence he was put into a barrel of rum, and somebody said, poor Ned, but he came back in better spirits than he left.
Well, I don't think that meant he was grumpy. I think what it meant was he knew it was a death sentence to be sent out there. Yeah. The whole thing was a disaster. And Parliament and the government were crazy. It took them a long time to come to a diplomatic agreement. And they had actually arranged a peace with the Americans before this battle was fought. That was the ultimate irony.
Yeah, that his death in that sense was unnecessary.
Yes.
Actually. Now, I thought after here we might go across to the other side of the green baize door.
Yes, of course.
If that's agreeable with you.
Of course. Do you think they'll let us in?
Well, we'll ask nicely and see what happens.
Oh. I hope you've enjoyed this opportunity to look at the wonderful library at Tullynally, one of the finest still in private hands here in Ireland. And in the next episode, we're going to venture, as I mentioned, to the other side of the green baize door to look at what would have been the servants' quarters here at Tullynally. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for watching the Irish Aesthete. Goodbye.